The Galactic Council had a problem. It had many problems, in fact, but this one was worse than all the others combined. The Scorvian Dominion, a species so legendarily bureaucratic that their warships required 2 signatures just to fire a single missile, had done the unthinkable. They attacked human medical ships. This was not just an act of war. This was an act of catastrophic, intergalactic stupidity. And the Council knew exactly what would happen next. The Scorvians, unfortunately, did not. Inside the grand, ornate chambers of the Galactic Council, where beings from thousands of species debated the nuances of peace treaties and interstellar trade laws, a single human stood at the center of a very tense gathering. Ambassador Henry Wallace was a career diplomat. He was, as far as humans went, unremarkable, except for the fact that he was now the single most terrifying man in the room. He stood there, sipping his coffee, completely unfazed as representatives from every major civilization shouted in a dozen different languages. Unacceptable. Barbaric. Violation of every known convention. They attacked Nightingale-class medical ships. Does the Dominion have a death wish? Wallace casually stirred a sugar cube into his coffee. He had learned, after years of human diplomacy, that the best way to terrify aliens was to remain completely calm. A particularly anxious-looking Avarine, a species known for its delicate constitution and tendency to faint at bad news, clutched at his chest. Ambassador Wallace, tell me the humans are taking diplomatic action. Wallace took another sip. Oh, we understand. Silence. A reptilian ambassador from the Vocari species, one of the few who had ever fought humans and survived, hissed quietly. Explain. Wallace put down his coffee. Humanity has rules. Bureaucracy, like all of you. We have a chain of command, a structured, lawful system of response. He smiled slightly. But there is one rule, one universal, unbreakable rule. No one, in the history of warfare, messes with our medics. A faint, horrified whimper escaped from a gelatinous ambassador in the corner. Wallace continued. So, in response, the Department of Strategic Conflict Resolution has initiated Protocol BOLO. He pulled out a small datapad, tapped a few buttons, and set it down on the table. A hologram flickered to life, displaying 7 dossiers. The screaming began almost immediately. The Avarine ambassador fainted. The Vocari began muttering a prayer. The Scorvian representative, a very smug bureaucrat who up until now had been adjusting his war medals, squinted at the files. I do not understand, he said finally. Wallace looked him dead in the eyes. That's because you've never had to deal with Marines before. Deep beneath Fort Bragg, in a cryogenic storage facility that officially did not exist, alarms blared, steel doors hissed open, frozen chambers thawed, and inside them 7 of the most dangerous human beings in existence. Groggily awoke. Sergeant Big Tex McAllister groaned as he sat up, cracking his neck. If this is another mandatory sensitivity training, I'm shooting someone. Lieutenant Kelly Mad Dog Ramirez rolled her shoulders. Why do I feel like I've been in a coma? A nearby scientist, watching nervously from behind reinforced glass, tapped a microphone. Welcome back, heroes. Captain John, the Colonel Briggs, who had a face permanently set and mildly disappointed, glared. Heroes? That ain't what they called us last time. The scientist cleared his throat. Yes, well, technically, all of you were deemed too unpredictable for continued service. Dishonorably discharged, McAllister corrected. Legally classified as a potential war crime in progress, added Kowalski, already checking his pockets for explosives. The scientist sighed. The good news is, your records are being expunged. The bad news is, you've been reactivated. A long silence. Then Gremlin O'Toole, cyber warfare specialist, grinned. Oh, hell yeah. Who pissed off Earth this time? The scientist winced. The Scorvian Dominion attacked 3 of our medical ships. Silence. Then McAllister cracked his knuckles. Ramirez let out a low, ominous chuckle. Doc Hayes, the only one among them with a semblance of medical knowledge, rolled her eyes and pulled out a flask. "Ah," said Briggs finally. "So, they want to die screaming." The scientist coughed. Officially, your mission is to de-escalate the situation." They all stared at him. Briggs smirked. "Yeah, sure, we'll do that." Nobody believed him. On the bridge of the Scorvian flagship, Obedience to Bureaucratic Supremacy, Admiral Vrix of the Dominion was in the middle of a very important meeting. Specifically, he was being yelled at. "Are you insane?" The Scorvian Emperor screeched over the hologram. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" Vrix, ever the loyal officer, did not understand the outrage. "Exalted One, I merely enforced our territorial authority. The humans were trespassing." "They were medical ships," Vrix sniffed. "The Dominion does not recognize. The humans do not care what we recognize." The Emperor's eye twitched violently. "The entire Galactic Council is panicking. The Vorvexians already sent me a message that just said, 'Goodbye, it was nice knowing you.' What does that mean?" Vrix was about to respond when the transmission cut out. Instead, a different message came through. A grainy video. A single human soldier, shirtless, wearing dog tags, standing in an empty hangar. He cracked open an energy drink, downed the whole thing in 3 seconds, crushed the can. Then he grinned directly into the camera and said, "We're coming." The video cut. Admiral Vrix, for the first time in his life, felt something he did not understand. Terror. Admiral Vrix had always prided himself on his meticulous attention to bureaucratic order. He had memorized every code, every statute, and every regulatory amendment of the Scorvian Dominion's military doctrine. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, that could not be controlled through well-structured paperwork and strategic applications of legal red tape. And yet, as he stared at the now black screen where the human transmission had just played, he felt something deeply unsettling. The humans had not responded with formal complaints. They had not attempted counterattacks or postured with their usual bureaucratic nonsense. They had sent a single shirtless man drinking an energy beverage. This was a tactical response that no Scorvian war doctrine had prepared him for. Vrix turned to his bridge crew, a collection of Scorvian officers who, up until this moment, had been confidently awaiting orders for the next phase of military action. Now, however, they were shifting uncomfortably, exchanging glances that reeked of growing doubt. "Admiral," one of his aides whispered nervously, Should we prepare for human retaliation?" Vrix scoffed. "Don't be absurd. We are the Dominion." "We do not fear." A new alert interrupted him. A priority transmission was coming in. He expected it to be from the Emperor again, demanding he rectify this situation. Instead, the identifier on the transmission read something strange. DSCR Command.Vrix's frilled crest stiffened. He had never heard of this designation before. That was troubling. Scorvian intelligence prided itself on knowing everything about its enemies. "Patch it through," he ordered, feigning confidence. The view screen flickered, and suddenly, the bridge of the Obedience to Bureaucratic Supremacy was filled with the faces of 7 humans, each one looking significantly more unhinged than the last. At the center sat a man who exuded the quiet, terrifying authority of someone who had been personally responsible for at least 5 incidents that had made their way into history books. His uniform was unkempt, his boots were propped up on the console, and he was casually chewing on something. Beef jerky, Vrix thought, though he could not fathom why anyone would consume preserved animal flesh in the middle of an official communication. Scorvian. "Dominion," the human drawled, eyes half-lidded with disinterest. "This is Captain John the Colonel Briggs of the Department of Strategic Conflict Resolution. You've done messed up." Vrix straightened. "This is Admiral Vrix of the Scorvian." Yeah, we know who you are, Vicky," interrupted another human, a female with sharp eyes and a predatory grin. "We read the dossier. Congratulations on the promotion. Bet your mama's real proud." Vrix's frills flared with irritation. You will address me properly. No, we won't, Briggs said bluntly. Now listen up, Pencil Lizard. We're here to fix the problem you made. You attacked medical ships. That means we have full clearance to make you regret every single decision that led you to this moment. Vrix took a steadying breath. You are speaking to an admiral of the Scorvian Dominion. We do not negotiate with rogue. Who said anything about negotiation? Briggs tilted his head. We're here to conduct an educational exercise. Vrix blinked. What? A different human, this one leaning back with his arms behind his head, let out a chuckle. You ever hear about a little thing called psychological warfare, lizard boy? Before Vrix could answer, the communication cut off. Vrix turned to his bridge. Officers. Find out where that transmission originated. Now. One of his technicians was already frantically typing. Sir, I don't understand. The signal came from everywhere. Vrix felt his stomach twist. What do you mean everywhere? The technician's eyes were wide with panic. It was a ghost transmission, Admiral. The humans bounced it through every unsecured relay in our own network. We don't know where they actually are. The Admiral clenched his jaw. This was unacceptable. This was chaos, and he detested chaos. Initiate a full security lockdown, he ordered. I want all fleet communication channels secured. No one speaks without proper clearance. The moment he finished speaking, every single display screen on the bridge flickered again. It was another human video. The same shirtless Marine from before was back. This time he was standing in what appeared to be an empty Scorvian officer's quarters. He was holding a data pad and scrolling. The human smirked at the camera. Hey, Vrix, he said casually. I just wanted to let you know I got into your personal files. Interesting reading, buddy. Vrix froze. No, he whispered. The Marine flipped the screen around, showing a list of document names. The bridge fell into a horrified silence as every Scorvian officer realized what they were looking at. It was Admiral Vrix's personal search history. Now, I ain't one to judge, the Marine continued. But, you got some real weird taste in holovids, my guy. What exactly is a Scorvian domination fanfic? A strangled, horrified noise escaped from the Admiral's throat. The Marine chuckled. Also, you really should change your passwords, dude. Scorvia #1? That's just embarrassing. The video cut out. Vrix's claws dug into the console. His crew was staring at him, not in fear, not in admiration, in embarrassment. Find them, he bellowed. Now! But it was too late, because the humans had already begun. Across the Scorvian fleet, chaos erupted. Engineering crews found their work schedules replaced with incomprehensible human military jargon. Maintenance logs now required authorizations that only belonged to long-dead Scorvian officials. Tactical maps flickered and displayed an endless loop of human Marines doing push-ups in full battle gear while chanting something about PT never stopping. One warship received a distress beacon from a Scorvian outpost. When they arrived, all they found was a single crate. Inside was a single rubber chicken. It exploded in confetti when opened. Meanwhile, Scorvian officers started receiving encrypted messages marked top secret. Every single one contained nothing but images of shirtless human soldiers flexing in increasingly absurd locations. Inside Scorvian supply depots, hanging upside down from ventilation shafts, standing behind confused Scorvian guards who hadn't noticed them yet. The message was clear. The humans were already inside, and no one knew where they would strike next. Admiral Vrix had never experienced a full-scale mental breakdown before. He had, of course, endured stressful situations, budget overruns, misplaced fleet requisition forms, even an unauthorized office party that resulted in the spontaneous resignation of 3 junior officers. But nothing in his vast career of bureaucratic dominance had prepared him for this. He had lost control. Not in the traditional sense. His fleet was still fully operational. His officers were still following his commands, for now, and technically, the Scorvian Dominion was still in a superior military position. And yet, none of that mattered. Because the humans were inside his mind. Across his fleet, High-ranking officers were resigning without explanation. Warship captains were filing stress-related medical leave. Entire communications arrays were going dark without enemy interference. And worst of all, morale had collapsed. Not due to battle, not due to sabotage, but because every Scorvian was experiencing pure existential horror at the realization that the humans could be anywhere. A lieutenant stumbled onto the bridge, pale and shaking. "Sir, the humans are—" "Out with it," Vrix barked. The lieutenant swallowed. "Sir, they're messing with the PowerPoint presentations." Vrix stiffened. "No, not possible. The Scorvian military ran on PowerPoint presentations. Every battle plan, every training module, every single aspect of war doctrine was rigorously documented in slide form, down to acceptable font sizes for combat briefings." "Explain," Vrix demanded. The lieutenant was visibly sweating. "Sir, the tactical briefing on the invasion of the Terran colonies. It was scheduled for this morning." When the officers arrived, the slides had been replaced. Vrix's frills twitched violently. Replaced? With what? The lieutenant hesitated, as if saying it aloud would summon the horror back into existence. Finally, with the broken voice of a man who had seen too much, he whispered, "A 247-slide presentation on human military history titled, 'Why You Don't Mess with the United States Armed Forces.'" Silence gripped the bridge. Vrix's tail curled in alarm. What did it say?" The lieutenant pulled up a data pad and scrolled with trembling fingers. "It started with a brief history of warfare, which was a lie. There was nothing brief about it. It was 4 hours long and included audio commentary from an entity referred to as Sergeant First Class Gremlin O'Toole. A quiet, strangled noise escaped from the communications officer's throat. Vrix composed himself. Perhaps it was merely psychological intimidation. It does not mean they are here." The lieutenant hesitated. "Sir, slide 146 was a detailed analysis of our ship designs." Vrix froze. The lieutenant continued, his voice cracking. "Slide 203 featured pictures of our supply depots. From inside the depots." Vrix's breathing became shallow. His claws dug into the console. "And slide 247? The lieutenant turned pale. "Sir, slide 247 was—" He swallowed. "It was a photo of you sleeping in your quarters last night." The bridge went dead silent. Vrix's eye twitched. "That's impossible," he whispered. "They put a sticky note on your forehead, sir." Vrix's claws twitched involuntarily toward his temple. A sudden horrifying realization hit him. There had been a strange note on his nightstand this morning. He had dismissed it as some sort of clerical misplacement. But now he knew the truth. His breathing became erratic. He clenched his fists, trying to suppress the panic rising in his throat. "Sir," the lieutenant said cautiously, What should we do?" For the first time in his entire highly structured, meticulously organized life, Vrix had no idea. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Absolutely Not Sanctioned, the DSCR strike team was thriving. Sergeant Gunner McAllister was sitting at a console, casually sipping from a jug of coffee that may or may not have been classified as a war crime by 3 separate species. "Vrix is going to lose it any second now," he chuckled, watching the latest wave of pure psychological devastation ripple through the Scorvian fleet. "That's the plan," Captain Briggs said, kicking back in his chair. "By now, the entire Dominion has realized they've lost. They just haven't figured out how to surrender yet." Gremlin O'Toole was cackling at his station. "I still can't believe they let their entire battle doctrine run off PowerPoint. Absolute amateurs. They don't even know what a redacted Special Forces after-action report looks like," Ramirez added, shaking her head. "I bet half of them have already gone AWOL just from reading about Fallujah." Boom Boom Kowalski grinned. "Speaking of which, did you see the latest resignation reports?" He spun his console around. 18. Scorvian fleet officers had resigned in the last hour alone, citing irreversible cognitive damage and newfound religious terror. Another 36 had been admitted to medical for stress-induced hallucinations. God, I love our job. McAllister sighed happily. At that moment, the command screen flickered, and a new incoming transmission appeared. Briggs smirked. Well, that didn't take long. The screen lit up, revealing the Emperor of the Scorvian Dominion. Himself, the once mighty ruler of a galactic empire, now looked like a broken lizard. His frills were limp, his eyes were bloodshot, and behind him, the walls of his throne room were covered in what appeared to be hastily scribbled threat analysis reports. Humans, the Emperor croaked, voice hoarse. Briggs leaned forward, resting, his elbows on the console. "Sup, buddy?" The Emperor visibly recoiled at the casual tone. "You win," the Emperor admitted weakly. You monsters have proven your point." Briggs glanced at his team. Ramirez gave him a thumbs up. McAllister mimed drinking from an imaginary beer. O'Toole was still typing something. "All right," Briggs said, turning back to the Emperor. "We accept your surrender." The Emperor sagged, in relief. "On one condition," Briggs added. The Emperor's eyes darted back up. "Condition?" Briggs grinned. "We need you to publicly admit that attacking human medical ships was the dumbest, most ill-advised decision in the history of your entire species." The Emperor twitched. "Say it," Briggs pressed. "Nice and loud." A long, painful silence. Finally, the Emperor closed his eyes and exhaled. "The Scorvian Dominion acknowledges," he muttered, "that attacking human medical ships was an administrative oversight." Briggs raised an eyebrow. "Try again." The Emperor twitched again. "It was an error in judgment." Briggs shook his head. "Nah, one more time. Really sell it." The Emperor's claws flexed against his throne. He let out a defeated sigh. "The Scorvian Dominion officially declares that attacking human medical ships was the most catastrophically stupid, regrettable, illogical, and self-destructive decision we have ever made." Briggs smirked. "There it is." The Emperor buried his face in his hands. "All right, boys," Briggs announced, standing up and stretching. "Mission accomplished. Time to go home." Ramirez cracked her knuckles. "Shame. I was just getting started." As the human transmission cut off, the Emperor of the Scorvian Dominion slumped in his throne. For the first time in its long history, the Dominion had surrendered without a single shot being fired. It was, by all measures, the most humiliating defeat in galactic history. And worst of all, the humans had enjoyed it. The Galactic Council chamber had never been quieter. Representatives from over 1,000 species sat in stunned silence, their eyes locked onto the official transmission playing in the center of the room. The Scorvian Emperor, once feared across multiple systems, was slumped forward in his throne, uttering the words that no one in the galaxy had ever expected to hear. The Scorvian Dominion officially declares that attacking human medical ships was the most catastrophically stupid, regrettable, illogical and self-destructive decision we have ever made. The transmission ended. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, very slowly, the Avarine representative, a species known for its delicate constitution and general aversion to stress, let out a quiet, strained gasp before fainting onto the floor. The Vakari representative, who had fought a war against humans 2 centuries ago and barely survived, sat with his arms crossed, nodding sagely. "I told you all, nobody ever listens." A member of the Galactic News Network, whose antennae had been trembling the entire time, finally broke the silence. I just want to confirm what we all witnessed." He adjusted his glasses. "Did the Scorvian Dominion, the most bureaucratic, ruthless, and legally pedantic empire in the known galaxy, just surrender to the humans without a single battle?" Nobody answered, because nobody wanted to acknowledge the truth. The human ambassador, Henry Wallace, sat back in his chair, casually sipping his coffee. Looks that way, he said smoothly. The Cathal representative, a gelatinous diplomat who had spent the last century negotiating peace treaties, leaned forward. And this Department of Strategic Conflict Resolution, they are part of your formal military, yes? Wallace hesitated, then smiled. Let's just say they're a specialized group. The silence deepened. That was not a comforting answer. The chairman of the Galactic Council, a towering being of the Zyphorian race, cleared his throat. And may I ask, Ambassador Wallace, what exactly did your specialized group do to achieve this result? Wallace took a slow sip of his coffee, savoring the moment. He glanced at the collection of terrified aliens before him, then said, "Mostly, they just messed with them." Gasps filled the chamber. The Thalnari representative, a species famous for its strategic military intellect, leaned forward. Define messed with them. Wallace shrugged. Nothing major. Some tactical psychological operations, unorthodox warfare methods, a few creative interpretations of diplomacy. The Vorvexian representative, whose home planet had once been occupied by humans for a brief 6-month period before they abruptly left, muttered, "Gods help us all." Wallace glanced at the time. Anyway, I believe the Council has an official motion to vote on. The human delegation proposes an official amendment to intergalactic law. No one attacks human medical ships, ever, under any circumstances, or Protocol Bolo will be reinstated. The motion was approved in record time. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Absolutely Not Sanctioned, the DSCR team was celebrating the only way they knew how, with an absurd amount of alcohol, wildly inappropriate jokes, and absolutely no respect for authority. McAllister was leaned back against a crate of explosives, tossing playing cards into a bucket. So, are we getting medals for this, or just another round of "don't do that again"? Briggs, who was nursing a drink and looking far, too pleased with himself, smirked. They'll say "never do that again," while simultaneously keeping us on immediate standby for the next time they need something not officially sanctioned. Classic, Ramirez muttered, already halfway through a bottle of something that smelled dangerously flammable. Boom, boom, Kowalski grinned, spinning a detonator between his fingers. You know, I didn't even blow up anything this time. Feels wrong. You mentally blew them up, Doc Hayes pointed out. That counts. O'Toole cackled, pulling up his datapad. Oh, by the way, you guys have got to see what I left in the Scorvian. Fleet network before we pulled out. Briggs raised an eyebrow. Should I be concerned? Nah, O'Toole grinned. Just a little parting gift. On the screen, the Scorvian military's entire digital infrastructure was now playing an endless looping video titled Top 100 Reasons Humans Are an Absolute Nightmare, complete with dramatic reenactments, historical battle footage, and terrifyingly detailed explanations of human war strategies. The Scorvian military would never be the same. Ramirez whistled. That's some next-level psychological trauma. I'm proud of you. Thanks, Mom, O'Toole quipped. At that moment, the ship's comm system crackled to life. Attention, DSCR team. Incoming message from Earth Command. Briggs groaned, rubbing his temples. All right, let's get this over with. The screen flickered on, revealing a very unimpressed 4-star general. His nameplate read General David Hargrove, and he looked exactly like the kind of man who had spent his entire career trying and failing to keep people like the DSCR team in check. Briggs saluted lazily. General, Hargrove sighed. I don't know whether to court-martial you or send you a damn fruit basket. Briggs grinned. We accept fruit baskets. Shut up, Briggs. Hargrove pinched the bridge of his nose. The President wants a full report. The Senate is in a panic. The Galactic Council is traumatized. And you idiots, somehow managed to take down an empire without firing a single shot. Briggs shrugged. We did fire a few shots. No, not at them. Hargrove exhaled slowly. Just get back to Earth. Command wants to debrief you. Thoroughly. McAllister leaned forward. Are we getting paid for this one? Or is this another classified expense situation? Hargrove scowled. You'll get your damn hazard pay. McAllister grinned. Sweet. The transmission cut out. Briggs leaned back, stretching. All right, team. Looks like we're heading home. Ramirez raised her bottle. 2 successful war crimes. Doc Hayes rolled her eyes. Please stop calling it that. Boom Boom Kowalski laughed. The galaxy definitely thinks it was. O'Toole grinned. Yeah, well, if they're smart, they'll never mess with us again. There was a pause. Then Briggs smirked. We both know someone's going to be stupid enough to try. A long silence. Then a collective sigh. McAllister groaned. God damn it. We just unfroze. Briggs grinned. Enjoy your downtime while it lasts, boys. Something tells me the galaxy hasn't learned its lesson just yet. The team clinked their glasses, together in a toast. Somewhere, in the cold void of space, an alien race was probably making a very, very bad decision, and humanity would be waiting.